So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. First of all, thanks for joining the session with Audiense, Forrester, and Havas Helia. We're excited to have you today. So our speakers are here to shed a new light on customer insights and explore how and why technology advances like artificial intelligence will play an important role in understanding customer insights in the future. Please tweet us at AudienceCo with the hashtag AI4Insights. So I'm delighted now to introduce you to our wonderful speakers that we have today. So we have Nuria Sadurni, the Data and Strategy Insights Director at Havas Helia. We've got James McCormick, who is a Principal Analyst at Forrester, focused on digital and customer insights. And we have Javier Baron, CEO and co-founder of Audience. All of their handles are on the screen at the moment, and you've got the hashtag in the corner as well. So feel free to connect and tweet with them on Twitter as well. Without further ado, let me share the presentation with James to take it away.
Thank you so much, Cassie. And let me just share my screen quickly. Give us a moment. There we go. And I'm assuming everybody can see my screen. And so really excited to be joining Audience and Havas Helia today with the likes of Javier and Nuria to really talk about what Cassie mentioned, which is insights, and really why. And for me today, I'm going to be making the case for insights as a strategic kind of initiative or something that can really provide us competitive advantage in this age of the customer. And I'm also going to look at the role of artificial intelligence in that whole kind of play. And so today, my presentation is going to be called Become an Insights-Driven Business and Surf the Wave of Digital Disruption. And so, what am I going to talk about? So, really starting off from the premise that many of us are, I don't have to convince anyone really that data-driven is the way to go in terms of making decisions. We've been doing that as large enterprises and many other kind of organizations for a while though. But in order to really maximize the opportunity we have for data and the the analytics and the insights that we can generate from us, that's not something that we've really been doing. We haven't been maximizing it. We haven't been kind of insights driven, so to speak. And so what I'm going to do today is really discuss the link between these kind of big concepts such as digital disruption and the need for us to be really and truly insights driven at scale across the organization. As part of that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what insights driven businesses are. At Forrester, we have defined what an insights driven business is. And we're going to discuss why we should be one, and perhaps maybe why we aren't one as well. So that'll be an interesting part of the discussion. I'm then going to go into talk a little bit about digital intelligence, which is really the application of insights and customer insights to drive digital engagement, drive digital interactions, and that's where the discussion around artificial intelligence really comes into play, because being able to do that at scale, we really do need to leverage the machine to be able to do that. And so that's where we start to make the link there. And what I always like to talk about examples of firms that are really beating the market through the use of insights and insights-driven capabilities through things like, which they then apply and generate value from things like artificial intelligence. So really quite excited to be here today. So let's quickly talk about this wave of digital disruption that is upon us at the moment. And many of our surveys, and it won't be of any surprise to you, that the execs of these big captains of these large enterprises that are seeking to surf this wave of disruption all know that disruption is coming. They know this wave is coming, and they believe, and this particular survey is kind of showing that execs believe digital disruption digital will disrupt their business in the next 12 months. So that's no real surprise. But what really is kind of interesting or even challenging is that these self-same people, these kind of leaders of industry, don't really have a clear vision for what digital really means for their business, and don't understand how to generate the value from this digital disruption. In other words, are they going to be surf this wave of digital disruption, or are they going to be dumped by it and be cast aside as enterprises? And so that is the real challenge that we have today. Many other ways we've asked and sought responses from these kind of this digital disruptions, that we know, for instance, that execs know that their businesses will not be anything like they are today in 2020. Now, given that we're coming to the end of 2016, that's just over three years from now, and now these execs believe their businesses won't be anything like they are then in 3 years' time. And so it's pretty scary when they actually don't know, what to do and how to go about it. So, we totally believe at Forrester, and we kind of see that borne out in our research, that to be able to compete and surf this wave of digital disruption, we really need to be good at changing data and using data and turning that into action. Why? Because digital really represents an opportunity, and also a challenge, by the way, to instrument the interactions that we have with our customers and across the business, actually, for collecting data really about that interaction, about that the impact of those decisions, and then being able to generate insights from that, and then being able to secondly, because it's a digital interaction, be able to apply or to change that interaction or influence in some kind of way because of that data. So we have a lot of data, and which will be able to, if we're really good at being insights driven, to be able to drive into a lot of actions, and certainly inform actions at scale. And the great thing is that most of us, or 3/4 of us really, aspire to be data driven. So we all kind of realize that we want to be data driven. But again, there's this kind of gap, right, where less than a third of firms are really feel, and this is self-reporting, they don't believe that they're good at turning data into action. And certainly my experience in speaking to firms and leaders week in, week out, and looking at their businesses under a microscope, that is definitely true. We're not really good at that, and there's a definite gap or disconnect between the data we collect and the potential data we collect, to drive actions, and that's where we are going to suffer if this digital disruption wave is going to come upon us. If we're not good at doing this, then we're not going to surf it. And so at Forrester, we firmly believe that we need systems, and that's technology and our process and the people in place that are able to tightly integrate the engagements that we have with our customers, or these systems of engagement or touch points, with the insights that we gather about those engagements, so that our systems of engagement need to be really tightly integrated with our systems of insight, and they should be almost one and the same thing. And in order for us to surf this wave of digital disruption. And at Forrester, we believe that firms that do this well are what we call insights-driven businesses. And so what is an insights-driven business? It sounds all very parochial, if I'm honest with you. It's not an exciting term, but because many of us believe that we are. And so let's read this definition in front of us. It's an insights-driven business harnesses and applies data and analytics at every opportunity to differentiate its products and customer experiences. So many of us might feel that we are. In fact, I certainly believe that most of us harness and apply data and analytics. There's absolutely no doubt that we do. But do we do that at every opportunity to differentiate our products and customer experiences? Do we have a strategy around doing that second part of that sentence? And do we actually do that? And that is really what differentiates insights-driven businesses really from the rest of us. And so part of the reason why we are not insights-driven businesses, or most of us really aren't insights-driven businesses, is because the whole ROI discussion around the technologies, the processes, the investment we need to make in data and insights to drive particular functions is really largely failed in terms of applying or being able to drive a strategic corporate initiative around this. If you take for instance, the world that I work within, digital analytics system, or that can drive, for instance, behavioral targeting for marketing, or drive product optimization, etc. They're all very much ROI focused, and and ROIs by their very definition are really specific business value driven, and by their thereby kind of creating these kind of silos of insights that really where insights is applied. So you might, for instance, apply great to acquisition marketing, but then maybe fail at the mid-funnel, or using insights to drive better customer service, or even deliver products, right? And so for me, ROIs are, I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing that, but we need a more strategic language to really talk about insights so that we can drive it across the enterprise. We need a language for our CEOs to understand the real value. And so at Forrester, we've tried to do that, and we've recently released this report, Insights-Driven Businesses, about insights-driven businesses, and whereby what we did was we analyzed startups, insights-driven startups, so startup firms that were VC funded. We kind of looked at sources like PitchBook, for instance, and we looked at the revenues of these insights-driven businesses that were also startups. And we tracked we looked at their growth today and also to 2020. And, with a 40% compound annual growth rate, we're looking at about $250 billion that specifically these small startups, this is what they're going to grow to in 2020. And that, that's really interesting, okay? But it really gets interesting when you then look at publicly traded firms, so large incumbent firms that are really, that we felt were insights driven when we really looked at it, and there was 40 of them, right? When we really looked at sources such as Morningstar, and we looked at the firms that were listed in those publicly traded listings, and we kind of looked at what their growth rate was going to be calculated using standard formula, and they are growing at about 27% compound annual growth rate. So that means that as an overall kind of revenue generation capability, insights-driven businesses will be generating $1.2 trillion in revenue by 2020. Now, the question you need to ask your CEO is whether she or he wants to be part of that 1.2 trillion or wants to be left behind with the the global GDP, which is around 3.5% annually. So I'm not saying that this is the complete discussion, but this is the kind of language that we need to use in order to really drive strategy and to really deliver competitive advantage. And when you look at some of these insights-driven businesses, which we will talk about very soon, you will see that they do have a strategy around being insights-driven, and they do have that executive sponsorship. So, so let's talk a little bit about this digital intelligence practice that I talked about, which is really the application of insights and being insights-driven around customer engagement, and look at what we need to really succeed. Well, first of all, we need a strategy, and we need a strategy at a corporate level, supported by the exec team, to really be able to drive competitive advantage. And that's kind of where we fail almost immediately, is that many of us, if you go speak to your chief operating officer or even your CMO, and never mind the CEO, and you ask, do you have a strategy around engaging with customers that is seeking to leverage data and analytics to drive better experiences for them so that we can gain competitive advantage? Okay, that's a little bit wordy, but you get what I mean. And most of them, when you ask them, say, yeah, we'll speak to my CMO, we'll speak to head of analytics, and so that's their kind of nod to it. But is it really a strategy? Do they really, for instance, have an organization or an ownership structure that enables the processes and has the people and skills to really, and the culture, by the way, to really drive be insights driven when it comes to customer engagement? Are we collecting the right metrics on and the right KPIs? Do we even know what success looks like at our digital touchpoints? So are we actually measuring success there? And does our strategy really support it? And then there's the technical approach and whether, the way that we think about optimization, which I'm going to talk about now. So let's quickly deep dive into the, the technical architecture that we need to be thinking about in the strategy that I'm talking about. And, we don't need to be too, sciencey about the whole thing. It's pretty simple. We just need data management capabilities to manage our digital data that we get. We need analytics to be able to generate the insights that we need wherever we need them. And we need an optimization capabilities to be able to then apply these insights at scale to optimize whatever we're doing, whether it's marketing, product development, customer support, you name it. And these systems really need to work very closely and be tightly integrated with each other, and data and information needs to flow very tightly between them in a very tight loop kind of way. Now, because it's digital intelligence, because it's insights for customer engagement, that really needs to be highly integrated and needs to be able to keep up with those fleeting moments that we have with our customers. Actually, at Forrester, we track 15 different digital intelligence technologies that we kind of really need, and very few of us have even half of these technologies to really be able to leverage insights to be able to engage with customers at scale to receive competitive advantage. Anyway, so that's the technology side of things. So we just need to think about the available capabilities that there are out there. We need to be audit where there are gaps in terms of the insights, the data, and the optimization capabilities, and have a clear roadmap that seeks to fill those gaps as well. Now, let's talk a little bit about this kind of concept of continuous optimization. So many of us do indeed use data and analytics in some way to optimize, say, media spend, to optimize paid search, to optimize mid-funnel conversions, to optimize the way that our app is configured and the way that our developers build experiences within, et cetera, et cetera. But do we do this continuously at every opportunity? Do we leverage every customer interaction that we have across all of our digital touchpoints? And do we use that interaction to collect information about our customer and the moments of engagement so that we can evolve the understanding we have our customers during these moments of engagement? And then do we then change the way that we engage with customers or the way that the system reacts in order to do that? And then do we test it again? And do we do this continuously at scale in order to gain that competitive advantage? Well, the answer is not. We don't do that at scale. We're not doing this at scale. Very simple concept, and believe me, it is a simple concept, but we are not consciously thinking about it in this kind of way. But if we do, then we can take steps to iteratively grow our insights and grow our digital intelligence and grow our ability to continually optimize across the entire organization, thereby gaining competitive advantage. If you think that this is just some kind of science fiction future, think again. I mean, you just need to look at companies such as Stitch Fix that leverage machine learning and it's kind of an artificial intelligence kind of way to continually optimize the engagements that they have with their customers. So let me explain. So Stitch Fix, for those of you who don't know, is a American-based fashion retailer, online fashion retailer, and what they do is they sell fashion. And let me explain a little bit more. So as a customer of Stitch Fix, what you do is you sign up and you give your preferences about what kind of fashion items you like, what you aspire to be. Are you professional? Do you want holiday apparel or whatever it might be? And you feed that back in terms of the preferences that you want and when you sign up. And then every so often, every month, every 3 months, a stylist sends you a box of about 5 or 6 fashion items. And the model of the business is that you as the customer can return all items free of charge and at no cost to you. And so it really is important for that stylist to get the those items right, and to be able to really understand you and understand the mood of the market, etc. So what they do is they've linked the stylist to a continuously optimizing algorithm, a machine that enables that stylist to not only plug in the preferences of the customer that they're looking to serve, but also understand, because from the historical interactions, what to help them target the right kind of set of clothing, etc., at that particular persona. And that algorithm continuously learns. It continuously gets feedback from all these interactions, the behaviors that customers exhibit on the website, kind of what they're looking at, their decisions that they make when it comes to keeping or returning clothes, looking at their preferences, aggregating that up as well, and continuously learning to then be able to improve on that KPI, which is obviously retention of clothing items, right, or fashion items. Now, the interesting thing here is that this really started off as a digital intelligence play. In other words, being able to help better digital engagement with the customer, and obviously, the overall the firm's KPIs. But then the procurement team, so the team within Stitch Fix that looks to keep their stock levels at the right level so that they can service their customers, according to the SLAs that were agreed. And what they kind of tapped into this algorithm to really help them understand what stock items they should have and how much they should have at any particular time, thereby actually reducing the cost of stock to one of the lowest in the industries, according to actually Eric Colson is the chief algorithmic officer that we spoke to at Stitch Fix. And so it had in this particular instance, it not only being obsessed with customer and understanding customer, not only drove better kind of revenues, but also significantly reduced costs as well. So really kind of interesting kind of take on an insights-driven business, so a firm that really gets a competitive advantage around that. There's a few others I just want to mention. So there's a company called Earnest, a student loan company, and what they do is they measure up to 100,000 data points for each student that looks for a loan and eventually becomes a customer. And they feed this into a continuous optimization engine to improve the loan decisions of the loan officer, right? So still machine, human working together. And so what they're really good at doing is offering loans to students that their competitors won't, because, for instance, their competitors will look at, credit rating agencies and look at data there. Now, I don't know if you guys were like me as an 18-year-old student, but I didn't have much of a credit history. And so they are able to then better service those students, because they gather behavioral information, social information, and up to 100,000 data points, which on each individual, which really helps them. And what they're also really good at doing is reducing costs. They happen to avoid students that their competitors might, through their the standard way of gauging risk, have provided a loan, which their their risk models through this continuous optimization engine has told them not to loan to. So again, a double whammy. Tesla, let's talk a little bit about Tesla. So what they do is they stream performance data from their vehicles continuously to help them then optimize the software and the way that the machine runs and how to kind of configure that machine. And then they download the latest configuration, the latest version of software over the air, which they then test and analyze again, thereby continually optimizing that product. Alaska Airlines, I like them because it's a fairly simple yet powerful way of continuous optimization. All they did really was instrument their aircraft doors to record, when they were open and when they were closed, so that you had, and that was reported back. So the COO meets on a weekly basis with the senior team to review the scheduling and how well they've done and where the areas and the issues are, and thereby taking actions to continually optimize and improve the processes and improve their on-time arrivals. And as a result, they've moved, for the region anyway, from the worst when it comes to on-time arrivals to the best in that particular region. When it comes to the Washington Post, one of their goals, of course, is to beat their competitors when it comes to being able to deliver value to their advertiser when it comes to their digital site. And we spoke to a chap called Dr. Sam Hun, who's director of personalization and big data there. And what they do is they continually monitor the clicks on ads on their websites versus the types of customers that are doing that, that are clicking on those ads, and they are continually improving their relevance, what he called their relevance engine, to then improve KPIs such as response rates, click-through rates, etc. So very much like that. And then lastly, is actually, this is my favorite, is there's a Danish football club called Midtjylland. Apologies to the Danes on the call, whether they see if I got that pronunciation right, but they rose up from nowhere a few years back to actually beat Man United in the first leg of the Championship League last year. And the interesting thing is how, this tiny team, which is basically 100th the size in terms of capital investment and revenue than Man United, how did they beat them in at least the first leg? They lost the second leg, by the way. The answer is that Matthew Benham, who bought the club, bought a majority share in the club. And Matthew, he comes from Smart Odds, which is an online betting company, which is obviously these companies are very insights driven. And what he did was he insisted that the club applied data analytics and continuous learning at every opportunity, for kicking coaching, for halftime team talks, for set piece plays and player selection, thereby being able to leverage existing assets to their maximum and to gain that competitive advantage. So you can see that it's not just the Amazons of the world, the Netflixes of the world, etc., that are gaining competitive advantage with insights. These are real companies, incumbent companies, some of them, that are really making strides when it comes to being insights driven. And so I want to end off my part of the discussion with just a little bit of a thought about what is driving insights, and just the statement that really 2017 is the year of the insights revolution. So why do we say that at Forrester? Why do we think insights is the year of the insights? 2017 is the year of the insights revolution. And really, it comes down to, it really tracks very closely to the investment in artificial intelligence that we are seeing. So our research for this year has really shown us that the current investment, so 10% of large enterprises this year are spending on artificial intelligence. Next year we expect that to be around the 45% mark. So that's huge. That's over 300-400% increase in number of firms that are actually spending, or enterprises that are spending on this space. And that tracks actually very closely to some of our other data when it comes to the democratization of insight. So for instance, we know that we've seen a steady trend last year and this year of an increase in these business decision makers who feel that they are unencumbered when it comes to access to these valuable insights to help them make their decisions. We believe that due to things like artificial intelligence, that will increase to 2/3 this next year, 2017. And so why is that the case? Why do we think that is the case? Well, as we kind of mentioned up front, the mantra that many of us have had is to try and close the gap from insights to action. And we firmly believe, and we've seen this, that artificial intelligence and technologies around this can enable this by providing faster, more precise decision-making capabilities based on sophisticated analytics, and putting that in the hands of the business decision maker, so that non-specialist. And how does this happen? Well, through investments, through things like machine learning, which will drive and automate things like continuous optimization, predictive analytics that will inform proactive business decision making in ways that were at scale that have never been achieved before. And lastly, through things like natural language processing, which will allow the business professional to readily communicate queries to the machine, which will then be able to do its sophisticated analytics and mathematics, and that feed that back in a way that is relevant to the business. And so that's why we think there is a big link between artificial intelligence and the growth and adoption, and things like the insights revolution that we are witnessing, and we will continue to witness next year. So I just want to end off by just reminding us that a top-down artificial intelligence and insights support is needed to really deliver and to be able to surf this wave of digital transformation. We should learn from the execs of Stitch Fix, Alaska Airlines, Midtjylland, and a few others that show that real support does bring competitive advantage through delivering this kind of thing at scale across the enterprise. And we see that these same executives, these same firms are investing heavily in other senior execs, such as chief data officers, which for the first time this year, the first time next year, will become the majority. So we know that 51% of large enterprises will actually have a chief data officer. For the first time in history, they'll become the small majority. And then insights-driven strategies supporting digital transformation are really set to increase in terms of adoption. So it won't be just those 5% of high performers that are going to be adopting that now. We're going to see that spread across many kind of incumbent large enterprises going forward, and that will be gaining competitive advantage. And largely, this will be enabled by things like artificial intelligence. So I'm going to end this part of the discussion off with a big thank you, and I'm going to hand over to Havas Helia to the folks there to talk about that. So over to you guys, Javier and Nuria.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, James. Those examples were truly amazing. Actually, I'm gonna take advantage of my position here and ask you, although we have later questions, I wanted to ask you if there are any specific industries that you see that they are succeeding the most.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's kind of if you really look at from a spend perspective when it comes to it's the way to look at it can be quite complex. But if you look at it from a digital intelligence perspective, which really applies those insights and those kind of elements of artificial intelligence, you can really for quite a few years now it's been retail or online retail. Probably no surprise has been the biggest spender. We've then looked at, then travel and leisure being the second biggest spender. This is overall spend, right? And then financial services and insurance, and it kind of tails off pretty quickly over there. Now the interesting thing is that financial services and insurance, they are perhaps the fastest growing sector. So whilst they might be the third biggest spenders, they are growing the fastest. And I've kind of seen that in the last 18 months has been this kind of liberation of insights teams to be able to apply particularly customer insights to acquiring and retaining customers. And that's because they've become better at distinguishing between different types of customer data and being able to manage what's really PII sensitive, what's not, etc., and being able to then have systems that kind of can separate out the use of those particular types of data. So yeah, quite interesting. Sorry, Javier, a long response to your question, but hopefully it did answer it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. Very, very interesting. So Nuria and I will be covering how artificial intelligence is transforming the customer insight revolution. But before that, just let me address how Audiense fits into this. So we at Audiense, we're able to deliver powerful consumer insights for our clients, and we do that with the use of artificial intelligence and cognitive computing systems. So we have worked with Havas Helia on a pilot for a top FMCG brand where we have been able to apply these insights to optimize many areas of their business. But before I get into that, let me give you a little bit of background. So we know that every brand in the world wants to know about their consumers. They have goals to improve marketing, campaigns, messaging, and as well the need to devise new products or make their current products better. They as well need to open up new markets. For all of that, understanding their consumers is crucial. So on one side, we have a traditional tool that you use to understand those consumers that are personas, right? That was created to efficiently communicate across a company and all its different departments what market research could determine about their consumers. And depending on the goal, if it is more strategic goal or more tactical goal, we may need internal first-party data, like transactional data, to create particular campaigns, to target particular coupons and offers based on time, or external data if we are, for example, creating a new product or doing market sizing. We used to use traditional market research techniques such as surveys or focus groups. On the other side, we have social media that I think we all agree that has changed many of the dynamics of marketing, right? Introducing real-time marketing when Oreo owned the Super Bowl with one single tweet. But the generation of all that data, all those tweets, all those posts in different social media networks, definitely is creating another disruption, right? And that's the social data by itself, or more powerful, even the combination between that social data with first-party data, transactional data, is playing a very important role in both strategic persona creation, so understanding better your consumers, and complementing those traditional marketed research techniques, but also on the tactical side. So I have a question for you, Nuria. In your experience, how have you seen social data in combination with other sources complementing each of these quadrants?
Thanks, Javier. Well, if we think from a strategic perspective, like, brands, I mean, you can better understand not just your audience. If you think you can understand everyone's audience, which is like, really amazing. You can look like, how everyone is engaging with them, like in social, but not only that, you can see as well, like the types of relationships that they have between them. You can know now their personalities because they are public, and also you can understand like behaviors of people. So we can observe all these from like and we can basically like generate tons of information. Like there is a large amount of data that is sitting outside there. With that, the possibilities are endless. You can create custom audience, you can create lookalike audiences. And by combining all these data points with like, other first-party data or like third-party data, you end up with like, a plethora of data points that, basically providing you lots of signals that you can use to fine-tune your strategy. I mean, if you think like, the other advantage is not that you can like, monitor all that over time. So that's, I think, one of the beauty of social data, that, is tangible. You can monitor over time, so it means that you can go back to an audience and see how, like, this audience is evolving. Whereas, like, with traditional techniques, that's a bit more difficult, but not even difficult. That can be, like, costly. So in reality, there is a real game changer for marketers, like, and how they go about segmentation. We have seen this in the company I work with companies that they were looking at traditional types of segmentation, and now we're looking at other types of segmentations more based on the needs that the consumer, like, they have. So try to imagine for a second, for brands where the ultimate goal is to reach masses of people, social data provides like, an excellent source for data mining. I mean, you can go outside there and you can find lots of people to reach. You just need to be smart with data to understand where to find those people. And the other thing is, like, that you can quantify. So social data, like, is something that you are going to be able to, like, quantify. So it has, like, a statistic, like, a significance, opposed to, like, social, focus groups, for instance. So it means that once you apply, your hypothesis, you can apply, and then you can target these people, like, with advertisement, or you can do lots of different things. I couldn't agree more with James that, it's all about, like, action data. It's not about producing insights. I think the beauty of social data is about that. Is about, like, that you can action the data. You can know, like, people's, like, preferences in channels. So that helps a lot. Can help a lot a brand. So, like, there's lots of things, like, I think I've already mentioned a few of them. So, but I will summarize. So it's like, you can just monitor over time. It gives you, like, an instant glimpse into, like, insights. It's a great source, like, for data mining. And, like, for me, the big thing is it's actionable. I will agree with James. It's like, that you can turn things into action.
Thank you, Nuria. Yeah, I think that, this attitude model clearly highlight why social data is playing such a key role in the transformation of consumer insights, because it begins with social data and then comes with the ability to have a perfect understanding of the market almost in real time. So the digital data, why for you we think is so important when it comes to updating our approach to strategic, not only customer, but also consumer insights?
I mean, like, there is different things. So for me, the first thing is, if we compare to traditional market research techniques, like, I think provides, like, more, like, tangible ways to action the data. The other thing is unfiltered. So it takes, like, a very unfiltered approach opposed to traditional, like, techniques. There is no human intervention. We have seen that working with brands where the clients, they have their own segmentations. We go into social data, and then we challenge back the brand or the client, saying, okay, hold a second, we found, like, completely different types of audiences that, they were unaware that they exist there. So that's, like, the good thing. Another thing that for me is key is the scalability. So if you think, like, traditional techniques, if you want to probably find insights in completely different markets, that social data will allow you to that. We have been working, like, with brands. That's one of the things that we found is using social data is scalable. You can do something in Turkey, but the next day you will be able to use the same methodology, like, let's say, in France. So that's a great deal. And then what results is, like, you can keep the cost down and you can be quite agile, which is key, like, now with, like, digital transformation, to be able to be quite agile. So, yeah, I will say the opportunities are endless. Like, we've seen it here in the company. We are using them every day. And if you think, like, if all the social data that can be merged with, historical data that you have, previous, like, audiences, you can merge that with marketing activities as campaigns, brand communications, is huge, the potential.
Thank you very much, Nuria. In the following slide, I wanted to highlight some of those opportunities. So here we can see some of those dimensions that digital and social data provides to the consumer insights equation. So the vast amount of data available from social and digital channels give us the opportunity to process and apply this information in new ways using artificial intelligence. Here I would like to highlight some of those. So, for example, using psycholinguistics, we are able to know how a particular audience engage with the world. What are their personality traits, or what are the motivating factors that make them make a decision, purchase a product, or click in your CTA. But also understand the online habits, or how are they connected. Beyond what they love, but also bringing new dimensions of affinities, like consumer preferences in terms of readings, in terms of health and diet, or in terms of type of cars, or spending habits. So I completely agree that, as well with James and with you, that that scalability to be able to move from actionable analytics to insights that automatically derive actions is artificial intelligence is the crucial part. That's kind of one of the important things. And Nuria, we have worked together for a FMCG client to better understand consumer segment, different consumer segments. How Havas Helia and cognitive computing enhanced insights and how that client was benefited from those.
At Havas Helia, we are starting to use more and more artificial intelligence for many applications. We start to discover that has loads of applications, also because like some of the clients we work with, they already have they have their own data. But one of the main applications that we found interesting in this particular project was to cross-check audiences with what we call consumer attributes. And I mean by these, key drivers for consumption, such as spend or price. So let me put you an example. For instance, if you go to a client's database, they will communicate with, the consumer base, providing discounts. So one thing, that we did is we determined, a price elasticity using, artificial intelligence. So we were able, to map, how sensitive they were, all these different audiences, to price. And you will be surprised because a lot of companies, probably 70% of people that they have in the database, they start to give them discounts, and there is not such a need. So once you start to use data and start to use artificial intelligence, you understand that, the company can do some great savings, because not everyone, is receptive to a discount or to a voucher. Is not, more importantly, if you are someone who you are not receptive to discounts and the brand is constantly, imagine you're a retailer and receiving, discounts for a jumper, you will alienate the consumer. So I think in that case, artificial intelligence is great because, provides that scale and, it's able to learn. So that's, something like that, which is just a use case of how we use artificial intelligence is can have a massive impact on the results of a company.
Thank you very much. Yeah, processing and understanding all that data is the duty of those cognitive systems and artificial intelligence. And in the following slide, I wanted to put just an example with a famous brand, Evian, about how consumer insights can help some of the dimensions that are bringing to that equation. In this case, network science, for example, is we see the network at the left, we are able to determine what customer segments by looking at the density of the engagement. And in this case, we can see do-it-yourself lovers, extroverted marketeers, comedy and foodie fans, and cosmetics fanatics. So already technology is giving that approach to be data-driven to understand better my consumer segmentation. But then when we want to understand more one of those segments, then we are able, for example, to say that they are majority women and they are between 25 and 49 years old, because we are using, because of the use of visual recognition and looking at the profile of images. Then as well, by using artificial intelligence and NLP with another discipline that is psychology, and in this case psycholinguistics, we're able to know that they have a greater inclination for pro-environmental behavior, or they have a preference for low-fat food or for low-emission vehicles. We also know that they love the Great British Bake Off and the X Factors, that the 90% of that segment are online on Sunday evenings, and that apart from cosmetics, they love comedy and cookbooks more than the average UK individual. And machine learning, psycholinguistics, visual recognition, and network science, in this case, have been the disciplines that, alongside between them, we are able to extract this kind of insights. So, as you can see, there are many layers of information that can become an important insight that can become that strategic advantage to our competitors. So I know, Nuria, that in Havas Helia, you guys have a very good approach to quantify this value. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
I mean, one of the things is, like, marketers, we might feel paralyzed by the lack of like perfect consumer data. People, I quite enjoy like James's slides, because you feel a bit paralyzed of taking any action because you're expecting like the perfect consumer data to arrive. But there are many opportunities to fill in the gaps in the meantime. You can use like third-party data sets, like, and you can start to execute some level of personalization, like an initiatives with artificial intelligence. In terms of like the value, for me, there is like three aspects that, they need to be in place. And some of them, they are like around I think I agree with James, like, with his statistics about 73% of like people, the aspiration is to be like a data-driven organization, but the reality is completely different. 29%, like, of them, they are just turning, like, they're starting to turn data into action. So for me, there is three key components to deliver value. And one is that you need to marry the technology, like, the analytics and the strategy. In my company, is like, we have been in meetings that some clients, they have the technology, so they have done a large investment in technology, and they're thinking that because they have the technology in place, that the problem is resolved, and, they are able to deliver value already. And that's not the case. Some others, they have the analytic capabilities, but they don't have the technology. So again, I think is like, in order to deliver like, that value, you need to have all of three working together.
Excellent. So thank you very much, Nuria. So I'm gonna finish with three key takeaways. One of them is, I think, we know the importance of that social data, right? As when we use it by itself, or even more powerful, when we use it in combination with first-party data, with that internal data to gather customer insights. That important is because it's updated, so you can see it in real time, things that are happening, but also you can go historically, so it's very flexible. That also helps to be very efficient and more agile. And obviously much costly effective than traditional market research techniques. And it's not only to unlock new opportunities with current customers, but also a deeper understanding of consumers. The second takeaway is how artificial intelligence is making sense of all that data in a completely new way, extracting age or affinities toward brands by using visual recognition, or extracting personality traits, or consumers' motivating factors. The third one is, as well, we are not saying about forgetting about the ROI. We are not saying that. However, to have this strategic to make that strategic decision to become an insight-driven business, there are things that we need to not be able to quantify, but at some point say that there is that data, extracting insight from that data sometimes can, or basically statistics is telling us that that data can deliver new ways to deliver much more ROI, right? And that's kind of the debate, an interesting debate that James was proposing. So actually, Nuria, I have one question for you, because I know Havas predicted correctly the results of the US election by using IBM Watson cognitive system. Can you tell me more a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that is like, the example I just mentioned a few minutes ago. So, I mean, what we did wasn't anything exceptional. Well, it was exceptional because we predicted who won the elections. But basically what happens, I mean, the technology is outside there. We had people that they had even better technology than we have. A lot of people, they have they have done predictions with like data scientists, which again is having marrying the three disciplines. I think what was good for us to predict the results of the presidential elections in the US is that we have the right technology, but we married that with analysts. So we were able to just make sense of the data. We published some dashboards that we were already with ITV saying to them, look, we already see from social data that Trump is more personable, again, applying personality traits, we could see that. And I remember the ITV presenter challenging back and say, well, I don't think Trump is that personable, but that's the thing, it didn't lie, we captured the essence of what people they were saying and what was the intention, and a different thing what was what the polls were saying, what the media was trying to say, we captured the essence. So I think it's very powerful, social data.
I think social in this US election has been kind of the focus of the aftermath of the election. So thank you very much for that. So handing over to Cassie to see if there are more questions.
Thanks, Javi. Yeah, we do have a couple of questions. Thanks to everyone for your run through. So first of all, we actually have one from Emma Bayliss. And she says, what would you say to a CEO who doesn't want to bring in AI, artificial intelligence, or NLP to their business, NLP being neuro-linguistic programming? Having a true insights-driven business means potentially opening data up that they might not be ready to see or deal with. So what would you say to that CEO? And it's not directed to anyone in particular, so if everyone wants to take some time to answer it, please do.
Yeah, so maybe I'll dive in first. Being the analyst, I can slightly be controversial in that. I'd say, well, you won't be a CEO in 2-3 years' time. I mean, basically, that's the honest truth. But maybe you wouldn't say that to her or his face because we want to keep our jobs, right? So, what I would do really is, it's not so much doing it, but look to let me prove to you the value of these approaches, and really. As any leader of business, your job is to maximize or understand what is going to get you competitive advantage, and look for any technique to kind of do that. So your job as the person asking that CEO is to really show them small iterative kind of value points as to how these kind of machine learning, and by the way, AI is a multi-stack beast, right? So NLP comes into play, neural networks, machine learning, predictive analytics, all sorts of things come into play, the image processing, so your stack will be quite, the ultimate AI stack is going to be a fairly complex beast, but start off small, prove to her that, for instance, machine learning within a behavioral targeting context for acquiring customers or converting them is working. Show them show them the value. Look at the uplift that you can get from a simple multivariate testing, which uses machine learning and AI kind of techniques, or at least part of that. And so really start to prove those values. You don't need to invest heavily to kind of show that value. You can do it in a pilot, or even you might even have existing capabilities there. So for me, that's the way to really approach it.
Yeah, and just adding as well something there is that I completely agree. So we have seen from energy companies to script writers to as well Premier League football teams, not only the Danish ones, to use artificial intelligence to do proof of concepts that then deliver that kind of insight that they need to invest heavily of them. And on the top of my mind, I remember, for example, Telefonica, the telecom company, where they optimize their advertising based on psychological traits. They triple the quality, in this case, the quality of people that they were attracting by that particular campaign. So I think that's completely through those little proof of concepts is what is going to help you to invest more heavily and then make those cases for the CEOs.
I agree with you both, and I think here at Helia, and that's a bit the dilemma. Like, you know, you need to take sometimes people on a journey. It's not that you change things overnight. So I agree that you need to look for like a use case. The best thing is before investing in technology, which a lot of brands that we work with, the first thing they do, they say, okay, I need to invest in the technology, but they don't have a use case, and then it's like, you know, a bit of paralysis. We don't know, we have all that great technology, but we don't know how to use it. So I will agree, like, you know, it's more the case of looking for like a use case. It can be something small. And the other thing is to reverse and say, okay, what is the risk of doing nothing about? So once you have a use case and say, look, if we don't do nothing, like, you know, what is the risk of not doing nothing? And try to quantify that risk.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, guys. And thanks for your question, Emma, and hopefully that answered for you. So I actually had a question myself, and I wanted to ask, open to everyone. So obviously, everything that we've all spoken about today in terms of customer insights and combining data points is essentially the utopia of what a brand or business should be doing. But what would you say to someone, what are the 3 key steps to getting to that ideal point? I know you explained how Stitch Fix and an FMCG brand are able to use this customer insight. But, you know, for a different sector or a different brand, what would be those 3 key steps to building that ideal customer insight strategy?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, for me, the first key step is you do need leadership support here. Your leadership needs to be in a situation where they are beyond convinced that they do realize that these approaches, like stitching the data to deliver competitive advantage, is the way to go. So, you know, you need a clear strategy supported by the exact first step. If you don't have that, you know, you're just going to be stumbling around amongst the, you know, the weeds in the forest. Secondly, is not a, you know, once you have that strategy and that support, it's not a massive rush to, you know, invest. It's to look at your existing assets, look at your existing skill sets and experiences. Because, so for instance, you know, when it comes to stitching and managing data, your marketing team might be really great at it, or some other parts of the organization might be great at it. Look to them to, and these other assets that you might have in terms of technology, to start to build out these proof of concepts and, you know, the processes and for working together and to, you know, expand across the organization. And then, you know, lastly, and if you wanted 3 steps, but, you know, there's a few more, but perhaps in the top 3 is, you're not going to be able to learn to do this yourself. You know, not in the time frames we're talking about. Organic growth in terms of capability is not an option. You do need to reach out to external agencies, external partners to really help you accelerate your capability around this area. So I'll keep quiet, but those are my 3 steps.
Yeah, I just want to add, as you said, James, there are like many steps, and to add one more, there would be to have as well that clear data strategy, because there are so many different data sources and how they plug together in different layers, in different levels. So some of them can be plugged at the individual level of a particular customer, so there can be plugged at the aggregated or the insight model level, and have that clear data strategy, and from all to merge all the different data sources as well, I think is key. And yeah, and completely agree to reach experts on that sense.
For me, I will add, well, just the first step for me is like, whatever is your strategy, try to put the customer at the center of everything that you do. This is becoming like critical, and it's becoming more and more common. We need to start to delivering experiences. Like, it's not about selling products, it's about like giving people like a great experience, whatever is your product or your service. The second one, and I agree with James because things are moving really, really fast, is look for the right partner. I think is critical as well to be able to have solid partnerships, like, with people that you work with, because you are not going to be by yourself doing that. So you need people who, they know what they're doing, they have the right expertise, they will take you through the journey, and they will help you, like, we've been working like with brands that sometimes they find it difficult, like that situation that, their CEO is not, or there is some senior parts of the business that, they are not committed to that change. And, sometimes it's good to have a partner that helps you to achieve that.
Perfect. Thanks so much, guys. Thank you, everyone, for staying on. I know that we've overrun by about 10 minutes, and I apologize very much. But I hope you enjoyed everything today, and especially that last 10 minutes. It was quite insightful. So thank you so much, guys. And I just want to say a big thank you to James and Nuria and Javier for joining us today as well. So yeah, hopefully you've all learned something, and thanks for joining, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.